archaeological data, by paleographical evidence, and by other more objective methods before applying the more subjective techniques of internal criticism. By internal evidence should necessarily be more subjective than that of archaeology and paleography. Cross does not bother to clarify. In fact, this statement inadvertently reveals why paleography should be deemed so important by adherents of the consensus. It can be used to counter the internal evidence of the documents, evidence which makes sense only in the context of the 1st century AD. The most prominent paleographical work on the Dead Sea Scrolls was done by Professor Solomon Birnbaum of the University of London School of Oriental Studies. Birnbaum's endeavours received fulsome endorsement from Professor Cross, who hailed them as a monumental attempt to deal with all periods of Hebrew writing, attempting to parry the copious criticism to which Birnbaum's exegesis was subjected. Cross asked his readers to remember that it was written by a professional paleographer, tried to the limit by the Lilliputian attacks of non-specialists. Such is the intensity of academic vituperation generative by the question of paleographical evidence. Birnbaum's method is bizarre, to say the least, reminiscent less of the modern scientific method with which he purports to dignify it than of, say, the nether reaches of numerology. Thus, for example, he presupposes, and the whole of his subsequent procedure rests on nothing more than this unconfirmed presupposition, that the entire spectrum of the text found at Qumran extends precisely from 300 BC to AD 68. Thus, in one instance, he takes a text of Samuel found in K4 at Qumran, having methodically combed this text. He cites 45. He cites 45 specimens of a particular calligraphic feature, 11 specimens of another. Mit der Dummheit Skiller observed Camphon, got for reasons the gods themselves must find mind-boggling. Birnbaum's then proceeds to set up an equation. The proportion of 56 to 11 equals 368 to x, 368 being the number of years the text span, and x being the date he hopes to assign to the text in question. The value of x calculated legitimately enough in purely mathematically terms is 72, which should then be subtracted from 300 BC. Birnbaum's hypothetical starting point. He arrives at 228 BC. The result, he claims triumphantly, will be something like the absolute date for the Samuel manuscript. To speak of something like an absolute date is rather like speaking of a relatively absolute date, but quite apart from such stylistic solecisms, Birnbaum's method, as Eisenman says, is of course preposterous. Nevertheless, Birnbaum's